What would you do if your most trusted horse refused to drink water for 3 days straight? What this rancher uncovered beneath the trough changed everything forever. John Carter had worked the land in Montana's Bitterroot Valley for over 20 years. He'd seen it all, or so he thought. But nothing prepared him for this. His horse, Thunder, stood a yard from the wooden trough, ears pinned back, refusing to drink. The animal would approach, sniff the air, then back away as if the water itself were poison. John crouched beside the trough, running his weathered fingers along its edges. The water looked clean, smelled normal, just like always. He'd built this trough himself, placed it near the old pine where the spring water ran coolest. Every animal on the ranch drank from it without issue, except Thunder. "Come on, boy," he whispered, extending a hand. The horse stepped forward slowly, nuzzled his palm, then jerked its head toward the trough and let out a sharp whinny, urgent, like a warning. Thunder had been with John since the day he bought this land. Never sick, never stubborn, never turning down food or water. That horse was more reliable than most people John knew. But now, 3 days in, Thunder would drink from the creek down the hill or from buckets John filled by hand. But this trough? Not a chance. John stood, brushing dust from his knees. Something was wrong here, and it wasn't the water. Animals have instincts beyond what humans understand. He'd learned that herding cattle for years. When horses spook on empty trails, wise men listen. When dogs refuse to enter certain buildings, smart folks find another shelter. He circled the trough, inspecting every angle. The wood showed normal wear, no cracks, no rot. The metal bands were solid, nothing out of place. Yet Thunder kept his distance, watching with dark eyes that seemed to hold knowledge John couldn't grasp. The sound of hoofbeats broke John Carter's thoughts. Clara Moore rode up on her spotted mare, her silver hair braided tightly despite the early hour. She'd lived in Montana's Bitterroot Valley longer than anyone, knowing every story and secret the mountains held. "Morning, John," she called, dismounting with the grace of someone half her age. "Heard you're having trouble with your animals." John nodded toward Thunder, still frozen in his wary stance. 3 days now, won't touch the water. Clara approached the trough, and her face changed instantly, paling as she took 2 quick steps back. "You need to get that horse away from here," she said, her voice low. "Right now." John frowned. "Why? What's wrong?" Her eyes, heavy with decades of buried knowledge, met his. "Because some things are better left alone, John. That trough sitting on ground that holds more than water." John stared at Clara, searching her weathered face for answers. "What do you mean, more than water?" She glanced around nervously, as if the mountains themselves might be listening. "This land wasn't always yours, John. Before you bought it from Thompson, it belonged to a man named Elias Reed." The name meant nothing to John, but the way Clara said it carried weight. She stepped closer, lowering her voice despite the empty landscape. "Reed was a hard man, kept to himself mostly. But folks in town knew things about him, things that made them cross the street when he passed." She paused, eyeing Thunder. "He vanished one winter. Just like that. Come spring, Thompson bought the land cheap." A chill ran through John despite the warming sun. "Vanished? How?" "No one knows for sure," Clara said, her gaze dropping to the ground beneath the trough. "But there were stories about Reed. About money he took from folks, debts he collected with methods that weren't exactly legal. Some said he buried things, valuable things. Others said he buried things better left underground." Thunder snorted and pawed the dirt, growing more agitated since Clara's arrival, as if her presence confirmed his suspicions about the spot. "You think there's something buried under there?" John asked. Before Clara could answer, the sound of another rider echoed through the valley. A man on a black horse approached with purpose, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. As he neared, John recognized the sharp features of Amos Kane, a newcomer to the region who'd been asking around town about old properties and their histories. Amos Kane dismounted without invitation, his cold eyes locking onto the trough. "Morning, folks," he said, his voice carrying an edge. Heard there might be something interesting out this way. Clara took a step back, her face paling further. Amos, didn't expect you around here, she said cautiously. News travels fast in small towns, Amos replied, his gaze fixed on the wooden structure. Especially about stubborn horses and old secrets. John felt tension crackle between his visitors. Secrets? This is ranch land, he said. Been that way for years. Amos smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Depends on what kind of secrets we're talking about, friend. Some things get buried that don't belong in proper graves. Thunder let out a loud whinny, backing away from the three humans, his unease growing by the second. What exactly are you getting at? John demanded. Amos stepped closer to the trough, close enough that Thunder bolted 6 meters back. I'm saying your horse knows something we don't, Amos said. And I think it's time we found out what Elias Reed was so keen on keeping hidden. He knelt beside the trough, pressing his palm to the earth. I've got a feeling what's down there belonged to someone else first. John's hand instinctively moved toward the rifle strapped to his saddle. Something about Amos set his nerves on edge. This is my property, Kane, he said firmly. You don't decide what gets dug up here. Amos stood slowly, brushing dirt from his hand. Your property, sure. But some debts run deeper than landlines, Carter. Elias Reed took something that didn't belong to him, something that belongs to my family. The pieces started clicking in John's mind. You think Reed buried stolen money under my trough? Money, papers, who knows what else, Amos said, pointing at Thunder, who stood at a safe distance. But I'd bet your horse is guarding something that rightfully belongs to the Kane family. Animals can smell things we can't, old leather, metal, even human remains if they've been underground long enough. Human remains? The words hit John like a blow. You're saying Reed might have killed someone? Amos circled the trough. I'm saying Reed vanished for a reason, and it wasn't because he got tired of the view. My grandfather confronted him about a theft right before that winter. They had words, hard words. Next thing anyone knew, both men were gone. Clara's face was white as fresh snow. Amos, you can't mean. I'm not suggesting, I'm stating facts, Amos cut in. He knelt again, pressing his ear to the ground near the trough's base. The earth here sounds different, hollow, like it's been dug up and filled back in. John took a breath. All right, he said finally. But we do this right. We move the trough first, carefully. If we find anything that looks like remains, we stop and call the sheriff. Amos nodded slowly. Fair enough. But if we find what's mine, I'm taking it back. Clara mounted her horse swiftly. I want no part of this, she said. Some things should stay buried, John. Remember that. She rode off without looking back. John Carter and Amos Kane set to work moving the trough, which proved easier than expected. With both men lifting, they shifted it 2 meters from its original spot. Beneath, the earth looked different, darker, more compact, as if it had been disturbed and packed down again. Thunder watched from his safe distance, no longer whinnying but standing perfectly still, as if waiting for something to be revealed. They began to dig. The first shovelful came up clean, but the second struck deeper, and the sound changed, a dull thud against something solid. Both men froze. Metal, Amos whispered. Definitely metal. They worked more carefully now, using their hands to clear loose dirt. Within minutes, the outline of an old iron box emerged, about the size of a saddlebag, with a simple latch rusted over by years. Inside, wrapped in waxed canvas, was a leather folder tied with twine. Beneath it, a small cloth bag clinked softly. Gold coins, Amos said, untying the bag and pouring several pieces into his palm. These are definitely from my grandfather's collection. John watched as Amos examined each coin. The folder, however, remained unopened. What's in the papers? John asked. Amos's hands hesitated over the leather ties. He untied the twine and opened the folder carefully. His face went pale as he read the first document. This isn't about stolen property, Amos said quietly. This is about murder. And that, folks, is when everything changed. Because what they found wasn't just a buried box, it was the truth about a crime hidden for 30 years. A truth one wise horse refused to let rest.